Hi guys, it's Allie. Welcome to another Time Travel Tuesday where we combine tingles with nostalgia as decided by usually you, but this time as decided by me. If you guys remember, last week I didn't hold a vote for this week's Time Travel Tuesday topic. I told you that I had come into possession of a cool item that fit really well into the theme of Time Travel Tuesday. So I was going to pick the topic, and I have. So I'm going to share with you what that item is. Many of you guessed correctly that today's topic would be Indiana Jones. And that's what I'll be talking about today because I was recently given this set of Indiana Jones micro machines from 1995. And I thought, well, this is perfect because I've been wanting to do Indiana Jones for a long time, but it's never quite made it to number one in the votes for Time Travel Tuesday. So here it is. And so I'm going to share these with you and tell you everything that I know about Indiana Jones. By the way, he kind of blends in with my bedspread, but this is my cat. Say hi. You see him? Yeah. This is my cat. His name's Albus. He's my baby. So he's gonna join us today, apparently. So before I get started telling you all about Indiana Jones, I want to tell you a little bit about micro machines because this is a really interesting kind of nostalgic thing in itself. So micro machines are a line of toys made by the company, you can see that, Galoob, which is now actually a part of Hasbro. And they were popular especially in the mid-1980s and throughout the 90s. And they are what are known as tiny scale playsets and vehicles. Well, oftentimes they're vehicles, as you can see. And they're especially famous for their commercials, which some of you may remember. Their television commercials featured a man, an actor named, I think his name, I might pronounce it wrong. His name was John Moshida Jr., who was at that time known in the Guinness Book of World Records as the world's fastest talker. And the commercials usually featured the slogan at the end, "If it doesn't say micro machines, it's not the real thing." And so he would say all of that really, really, really fast. And yeah, there was this really popular line that they put out called the Insider series, and that was, if you can imagine, maybe one of these cars. This is a little dusty because it's old. One of these cars opening on a hinge, and inside of one of these teeny tiny little cars would be another even tinier itty bitty car of a different model. So those were really, really popular through like the 80s and early 90s. That's probably one of their most popular series. And I never played with micro machines, but when I learned about the Insiders series, I thought, well, as you know, I'm a fan of teeny tiny little miniatures. I love miniatures. So I think that would have been really cool to have this tiny little thing open up and have a teeny, even tinier thing inside of it. Yeah. Anyway. And they were featured in the well-known film Home Alone with Macaulay Culkin. the main character, Macaulay Culkin's character, Kevin McAllister, fights off, uses the micro machines to fight off the burglars that are trying to rob his home. And he has tons of micro machines, and he puts them at the bottom of the stairs to act as like a trap. I guess he trips them with the micro machines. So yeah, they were very, very popular there for a while. So I have some Indiana Jones micro machines that I'm going to show you guys and play with while I tell you all about Indiana Jones. So let's go do that now. Hey guys, so before I get started telling you all about Indiana Jones, first want to let you know that this week is back to normal with the voting, so cast your vote in the comments below for your favorite piece of nostalgia. It can be anything. It is not a themed vote. It can be anything from any genre, any decade. Just remember to cast your vote in the comments below. Alright guys, so I have gone ahead and begun unboxing the micro machines because I learned that taking all of this out of the cardboard packaging was not a pleasant sound experience, so I wanted to spare you that. I will, however, be unsecuring them from their little spaces here in the plastic. They're secured down by twisty ties, so I'm gonna start taking them out one by one. So I'm gonna flip this over. But this one right here, I actually already untwisted, so I'm gonna remove him. And I'll try and remember to tell you which vehicle each one is, because I have a little cheat sheet on the back of the box. It tells me which vehicle is which and from what film. So this one is, try and get it up close. This one is the Pan Am Clipper plane from Raiders of the Lost Ark, which is the first film. And I like this one because these little propellers here on the front actually turn, which is super cute. Okay, so here's this one. I'm gonna unpackage the rest. Put this here for now. And while I do that, I'm going to tell you everything that I know about Indiana Jones. I like this cobra. Okay. So these are all taped down and twisty tied, so I'm going to start unpackaging them. Okay. Indiana Jones is a franchise, an entertainment franchise that's based on the adventures of fictional, obviously, a fictional archaeologist named Dr. Henry Indiana Jones. Now there are, well, technically there are 4 Indiana Jones films. I guess it's up to you whether or not you count the 4th film. In my opinion, it was a little ridiculous, but oh well. But originally there were 3 films. Raiders of the Lost Ark, which came out in 1981. And then Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom, which came out in 1984. And Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, which came out in 1989. And then the 4th film didn't come out until 2008, and it was titled Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. There was also a TV series that aired from 1992 to 1996 called The Young Indiana Jones Chronicles, which was based on Indiana Jones' childhood and adolescence. So I'll give you a little history of the film franchise, the movie franchise, because it's pretty interesting in my opinion. So, George Lucas, who wrote Indiana Jones, and Steven Spielberg was the director. George Lucas actually wrote the story for Indiana Jones long before the first film even came out. He wrote it in, when did he write it? Maybe 1973 or thereabouts. But of course it was then titled The Adventures of Indiana Smith, which obviously got changed down the line, but now he actually wrote and conceptualized Indiana Jones well before Star Wars came out. And at the time, he was working with a director and screenwriter named Philip Kaufman. And Philip Kaufman was heavily responsible for the story of Raiders of the Lost Ark. And he actually decided that the Ark of the Covenant, he decided on that as the plot device for Raiders. So that was all him. Now, unfortunately, Philip Kaufman had to step away from that project because he was hired to write the film The Outlaw Josie Wales, which was a Clint Eastwood film. So he stepped away to work on that. And so the project kind of got put aside. So after the release of the first Star Wars film, George Lucas was just swimming in fame and fortune and success because of how well the first Star Wars film did. And so he and Steven Spielberg, who is his good friend, went to Maui, I guess, to just kind of get away for a while, escape. And they were chatting, and Steven Spielberg told George Lucas that he was interested in making a James Bond film. Apologize, my neighbors are being noisy people. Yes, Steven Spielberg said that he wanted to do a James Bond film. But George Lucas said to him, well, I have a better idea. And he told him about the adventures of Indiana Smith. Long story short, Steven Spielberg said, let's do it. But we're changing Smith. I don't like Smith. How about Jones? And so they went with Jones. Just like that. And Steven Spielberg and George Lucas made a deal with Paramount Pictures for 5 Indiana Jones films. So in the third film, Last Crusade, the Holy Grail is the main plot device in that one. It's what everyone's after, and that was George Lucas's idea, and Steven Spielberg actually was not a big fan of it at the time. He didn't like it. Didn't want it to be the Holy Grail. But he sort of came up with a father-son type story to give the Grail more significant meaning so that he could be alright with it. So he tied it in with the story of Indy and his father, and said that the Grail could act as sort of a metaphor for the search for like reconciliation between father and son. So he made it work. Enough that he could tolerate it, I guess. So after the first 3 films were done, George Lucas wanted to do a 4th film, but he just could never think of a good plot device for a fourth movie. So he just kind of put it aside, put a pin in it. And just focused on the TV series instead after that. Now, in the TV series, lots of different people play Indiana Jones, the young version and the old. Harrison Ford wasn't really one of them, except for one episode. I believe he plays old Indy. And it was when they were filming that episode that something was going on in the episode, I believe. I couldn't tell you what. But something was going on that made George Lucas think, oh, I know what we could use for the fourth movie. Aliens. And he suddenly thought, cool, I can make a fourth movie. But Harrison Ford, who plays Indiana Jones, of course. I'm sorry for not mentioning that. But Harrison Ford did not like the idea of being in a movie like that. He didn't like it at all. And neither did Steven Spielberg. For him, more so, because he had already done a couple of Alien movies. I think he wanted to sort of move away from that. But, despite their lack of interest, George Lucas sort of created a story. Anyway. By 1996, he had pretty much a finished script. And a few months after that, Steven Spielberg said, no, I'm not gonna do another alien invasion movie. I'm just not going to. Which, as it would turn out later, would be not true, as he directed War of the Worlds in 2005, but he didn't know that. So, Spielberg just wasn't interested, so George Lucas decided to focus on the Star Wars prequels instead. So, side note, all of you people who are big fans of the first Star Wars trilogy and absolutely hate the newer trilogy, you might have Steven Spielberg to blame for those movies happening. Maybe. So yeah, George Lucas just focused on Star Wars prequels instead. So, a few years went by, and it was the year 2000. And apparently, Steven Spielberg's son, one of them, I'm not sure which one, he has like 5 sons or something. He has a lot of kids. One of his sons asked him when the next Indiana Jones film would be released, and I guess that's really all it took, because Steven Spielberg, after that, kind of regained interest in doing a 5th film. That same year, the American Film Institute had a tribute to Harrison Ford, and Steven Spielberg was there. And George Lucas. And Frank Marshall, who was the producer of Indiana Jones. And they all just got to talking and decided that it was time. They were ready to make another Indiana Jones film. Okay. This is a wooden motorboat that was used in Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, the third film. Waiting for it to focus, sorry. These are so detailed. They're really cool. They actually hired M. Night Shyamalan to write the fourth film. And he started to, but he quit because he found the experience to be too overwhelming. He just couldn't hack it. And he said that it was too difficult to get Harrison Ford, George Lucas, and Steven Spielberg to focus, is what he said. And I guess what he meant by that must have been that they probably were just kind of just throwing ideas around all the time and not sticking to one idea, and that must have been very frustrating for someone who was trying to write the script. Now, as far as a fifth film, there have been a lot of rumors, but from the looks of things, it's not going to happen anytime soon. It's been kind of mentioned here and there that George Lucas had ideas and this and that. There were rumors that Shia LaBeouf would be the new Indiana Jones, but I don't think that Harrison Ford will stand for that quite yet. This one is, it's the Flying Wing from Raiders of the Lost Ark. Okay, so now I'm going to tell you a couple of just fun sort of trivia facts that I think you might find interesting. So, this is interesting. Now, Harrison Ford was who Steven Spielberg wanted from the beginning to play Indy. But George Lucas was sort of hesitant to do that because he'd already cast Harrison Ford in a lot of things. He was in Star Wars 1, Empire Strikes Back, and also American Graffiti. So George Lucas didn't want to just be known for constantly casting Harrison Ford. So they decided against Harrison Ford sort of temporarily and actually went with Tom Selleck, who wasn't super well known at the time, but he was doing the show Magnum P.I. So they cast him and then went into pre-production. But there was a problem. CBS would not let Tom Selleck out of his contract for Magnum P.I. And they were concerned that the shooting schedules for Magnum P.I. and Indiana Jones would conflict, so they said no. So Tom Selleck had to turn down that role. Now, that's when they brought Harrison Ford back. But what's interesting is that the shooting with Magnum P.I. and Indiana Jones actually would not have conflicted at all, because Magnum P.I., the shooting for Magnum P.I. got delayed and didn't actually even start shooting until after Indiana Jones, or Raiders of the Lost Ark, had finished shooting. So, that's funny. Okay, now this car is the German staff car from Raiders of the Lost Ark. Keeps getting blurry, sorry. Focus. So, this one is the mine car from Temple of Doom with little people in it. That's Indy, and I wish I could tell you who the other two people are. I'm not sure. I think this might either be Marion or no, I think this is Willie. And I don't know who this little person is because I'm not as familiar with that film, unfortunately. But they're tiny, tiny little people. They're so cute. So, interesting fact, Harrison Ford was actually elected to the board of directors of the Archaeological Institute of America because of his role as Indiana Jones. They said that his character had a significant role in stimulating the public's interest in archaeological exploration. I think that's funny, because Harrison Ford is definitely not an archaeologist. This one I'm going to pronounce wrong, possibly. It's called the Duesenberg. Maybe that's how you say it. I hope I'm right. I might not be though. This was in Temple of Doom. So, Lara Croft, who many of you will recognize from Tomb Raider, is the archaeologist in Tomb Raider, in the Tomb Raider series. She was originally designed as a man. That character was originally going to be a dude. But they changed it to a woman, partly because the development too similar to Indiana Jones. Another video game series that was highly influenced by Indiana Jones was the Uncharted series. And the main character of the Uncharted series is Nathan Drake, who is very, very, very heavily inspired by Indiana Jones. Even kind of looks like him. I like the little propellers. Oh, this plane is, which one is this? I think this one, oh yeah, it's the Ford tri-motor plane from Temple of Doom. So there's a character by the name of Sala. And I think I said that right. And Danny DeVito was actually the first choice for that character. But he dropped out to do the TV show Taxi. It's really funny imagining Danny DeVito as Sala. Oh, this is a German tank from Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade. And here is teeny, teeny, tiny little Indiana Jones himself. And he's got his little whip and his hat and everything. And he just won't focus. There he is. So there are some fun little Easter eggs in actually all of the Indiana Jones films. A lot of Star Wars references. And I want to tell you a couple of them. They're probably, I think they're way more than what I'm gonna list, but I want to tell you at least some of them. So, in Temple of Doom, there's a nightclub in Shanghai. And the nightclub is called Club Obi-Wan. After Obi-Wan Kenobi. Also, in Raiders of the Lost Ark, there's a scene where you can see on a hieroglyph next to, like near where Indy is in the scene. There's a hieroglyph, and if you look closely, you can see little, like, drawings, like cave drawings, kind of. I guess they're not cave drawings, they're hieroglyphs. But little hieroglyphs of R2-D2 and C-3PO. And then, oh yeah, this is why I wanted to show you this plane. This is the which one is this? Oh, this is the pontoon biplane. Forgot to mention, but this is the biplane that's in the opening of Raiders of the Lost Ark. And it has the identification letters. Oh, I'm going to try and get really close. You probably won't be able to see it with my camera. But it's right here. It's right here along the plane. And it says OB. CPO. Which is a little nod to Obi-Wan Kenobi, and C-3PO from Star Wars, which is really cute. Can you see that? I think you can maybe just see it right there. Yeah. And there are more, I believe, but those are just some of the cooler ones, in my opinion. Also, Dan Aykroyd had a very short cameo in, was it Raiders? Might have been Temple of Doom, I can't remember. But he appeared in one of those. And he is the man who walks Indiana Jones to his plane after the opening chase in Shanghai. And I think that's Temple of Doom. If it's in Shanghai. So Kate Capshaw, who is actually now Steven Spielberg's wife, they got married, I think about 10 years after the first film came out. But she was in the second film, I believe, Temple of Doom. She played Willie Scott. For this one particular scene, she had a dress that was covered in these really rare vintage beads. And yeah, it was in the Shanghai nightclub scene. And so she's wearing this beautiful dress, and an elephant that was on set damaged the dress by trying to eat it. And they had to repair the dress as best they could without replacing the beads, because they were pretty much irreplaceable. And they had to alter it so much that it barely even fit Kate Capshaw anymore. And it was almost too tight for her to move in the scene. But yeah, so the costume designer had to fill out some insurance forms. I guess the dress was insured, and he had to write on the forms that the cause of damage was elephant tried to eat the dress. I think that's funny. This is fairly well known, but George Lucas's inspiration for the name Indiana came from his dog, who was named Indiana. What's interesting too is that that dog was also the inspiration for Chewbacca in Star Wars. But yeah, he used the name Indiana after his dog, and sort of because of that, other characters in the films were named after the dogs of crew members. So Willie Scott was named after, I believe, Steven Spielberg's dog, Willie. And then the character Short Round was named after, I can't remember, it was someone's dog also. Okay, so there's a scene raiders, I believe. Where Harrison Ford, Indiana Jones, is sort of challenged by an Egyptian swordsman. Now, on the day of that shoot, Harrison Ford had some really nasty food poisoning, I believe. So he was feeling really, really, really sick. And the scene called for him to have this sort of long, involved sword fight with this guy. But he was feeling awful. He didn't feel up to doing it. So he just said, why don't I just shoot him? And he did. And that's an iconic scene from that movie. And it actually wasn't even written into the script or planned. It was just another one of Harrison Ford's sort of genius. Kind of ad-libbing experiences. Except this time he was doing it because he felt too sick just to have the whole scene as it was written. And now that's an incredibly famous scene from the films. I think my apartment sprinklers just turned on. So I hope that's not disruptive at all. So, if you remember my first Time Travel Tuesday video about gremlins, you may remember me telling you that Gremlins, along with another movie, was responsible for the Motion Picture Association of America decision to bring in a new rating, the PG-13 rating. If you're paying very close attention, you'll also remember that the other movie responsible was Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom. And I think the reason that they needed a sort of a new rating for this film was that there's a scene with like a head explosion, which gave it an R rating, but then they changed it to sort of a head explosion but hidden by flames, I guess. And that changed it to a PG rating. But I think a lot of us can agree that that's still pretty graphic and probably a little bit too graphic for just a PG rating. So, yeah, hence PG-13 was born. Well, guys, that is just about everything that I know about Indiana Jones. I hope that you have enjoyed this week's Time Travel Tuesday and found it interesting and informative, and that you learned lots of interesting facts about Indiana Jones. Don't forget to cast your vote in the comment section below for your favorite piece of nostalgia from any genre, any decade. Just vote for your favorite piece of nostalgia. And I'll be seeing you guys again very soon. But until then, sweet dreams, time travelers. The first thing I got, I want you guys, you smarties out there, to tell me what in the Sam hell this is, because I'm gonna use it as a tiny ice cube tray.